Hello everyone, and good evening. Thank you very much. This is an honor and pleasure to be with you here tonight to tell you a little bit about my journey toward developing a novel, non-destructive method of fiber analysis. Now, before I begin, I just want us to take a moment to imagine an ideal world. And if you're a federal employee with a game-changing idea, that ideal world may include a place like this. That's right, the U.S. Government Office of Good Ideas, where you can register your game-changing idea and you would be provided with immediate legal and logistical assistance. You'd be given access to the resources that you need to try out your idea. You'd even be linked to potential collaborators within the federal government who would also benefit from seeing your idea come to fruition. But of course, we all know this is merely a fantasy. But what isn't fantasy is that innovation in government does actually happen. And I'm here tonight to tell you about the pathway that I took toward becoming an innovator in the federal government. Now, my story begins in 2010. I am a chemist at the U.S. Government Publishing Office. What we do is we print all the documents of our democracy, including things like the U.S. passport. And in order to do all that printing work, we have to buy all of the paper for the federal government. And in my laboratory, we test all of that paper. If the paper in question is regarded as a high-value paper, that undergoes further scrutiny, typically by using something known as fiber analysis. And what that is a way to determine the plant species that are present in a sheet of paper and in what amounts. And in order to do this, you first take your piece of paper, you tear it up into little bits, you put it in boiling water, you macerate it, you hit it with acid and base a few times, rinsing in between, and then finally you take a dilute solution of these liberated fibers and you put a drop of that on a microscope slide and let that dry before you can hit it with a chemical stain so that you can visualize those fibers under the microscope, just as we have here. Of course, when we get to this point, 2 to 3 hours of your day are gone. And of course, all of this is meaningless unless you have been specially trained in fiber analysis by attending a week-long fiber school, where you are forced to memorize scores and scores of plant fibers by their morphology, as is shown underneath the microscope. And we're not done here just yet, because as we're identifying fibers, well, we have to count them. And in order to count those fibers, we are given this sophisticated piece of technology, a hand counter. And so for the next 30 to 60 minutes, you're there looking in the oculars and counting 1, 2, 3, yeah. So it may be 3 to 4 hours before you actually have an answer to give to your boss. And if all of this seems a little cumbersome and old-fashioned, well, it's because it is. Fiber analysis as we know it was originally developed in the 1920s and 30s. In fact, a lot of the groundwork was laid out by federal scientists, federal employees like Mary Rollins here. And although fiber analysis is able to provide us with a lot of information, there is one crucial piece of data which it cannot provide us, which is very relevant to our modern way of living. And that is, it cannot tell us if there's recycled fiber present in the sheet of paper. Underneath the microscope, recycled fibers and virgin fibers are indistinguishable from one another. And in 2010, I was actually enrolled in fiber school to learn this method, and I also learned this particular fact. And this really alarmed me that we couldn't determine recycled fiber content, because I'm a chemist working for the government, testing all of the paper that the government buys. And, oh, by the way, government is mandated to purchase many, many grades of paper with a minimum recycled fiber content. However, there is no scientific method in order to validate the manufacturer's claims. So, by the end of my week in fiber school, I had decided that I would be the one to take this 20th century methodology and somehow come up with some sort of automation in order to propel it into the 21st century, in order to make this technique not only non-destructive and to remove the need for a specially trained human analyst, but also to shorten the length of time and also to capture even more data, specifically the recycled fiber content piece. And so, as you can imagine, when I returned back from Washington in 2010 from fiber school, I was really pumped up and I was really excited. But I very quickly hit a wall. And the reason for this is that the GPO, we are a manufacturing facility. We're not a research institute. My laboratory's mission is strictly quality control. And I very quickly recognized that I needed access to tools which were well beyond the capabilities of what I had in front of me. And of course, without an office of good ideas or anything like that to petition, I was pretty much left spinning my wheels for a while until a stroke of luck occurred. And that came in the form of meeting a man by the name of Mike Postic. Mike Postic was over at NIST, and he is an expert in cellulose. Cellulose, trees, paper, right? And I told Mike about my idea, and he immediately latched on to it and recognized the need to bring this method into the 21st century. And so it was in 2012, 2 years later, that he had made the very first offer for me to go over to NIST to try out some ideas. However, it was not until 2016 that I finally got my foot in the door at NIST, but the agreement that was reached was such that I could only work on this problem for 12 months and I could only go on NIST campus for half time. So essentially, after a 6-year period of pendency, I was only given 6 months to take something that was, by this time, 80, 90 years old and try to usher it into the 21st century. And understanding that my time was extremely limited, I hit the ground running, and I was very, very fortunate to be paired with two scientists at NIST, Dr. Yao Obeng and Dr. Jan Oberzud, both of whom use microwaves to non-destructively interrogate a wide range of materials. And we had decided that we would apply microwaves toward the problem of fiber analysis. This is the actual equipment that we use. This was built by Dr. Oberzut himself in his lab, and these are also commercially available. They're known as microwave cavities. And when the cavity does not have a sample in it, and it's on and buzzing, it has a particular environment. When we insert a sample, such as this paper sample here, into that cavity, we're disrupting that environment. And by measuring certain parameters that will give us an indication of the level of disruption that's going on, we can then distinguish between materials of different types, such as these different forms of graphene here. Now, if all of this seems very simple and very elegant to you, well, it is. To be honest, the entire process from start to finish, from loading your sample to pressing the button on the computer to make the thing go, only takes about 2 minutes. You get your data and you can move on with the rest of your day. And the first time that I sat down with this machine and ran one of my paper samples, I immediately thought, oh my God, this is awesome. I am going to be done with this task in 3 to 4 months. I will return downtown as a superhero, and everything's gonna be great. Except it wasn't. I had run hundreds upon hundreds of samples, and I was nearly 2/3 of the way done with my research agreement. And I was getting very poor resolution between different paper types. And at this point, we're almost entering year 7 of this saga. And I was very fearful that my story would end in complete and abject failure, and that more critically, I would never be given another opportunity to explore this problem. And I really started to dig deep, and I tried to identify where I was going wrong. And I realized that what I was doing wrong was I was trying to find a 21st century solution, but I was stuck using a 20th century mentality. And what I mean by that is in paper science, for the past 100 years or so, nearly all of the measurement of the physical properties of a sheet of paper are done in two directions: the machine direction and the cross direction, 0 and 90. And that's how I'd been running my samples, 0 and 90, 0 and 90, and I was getting poor resolution. Until finally, in my panic and despair, I had an epiphany. And I said to myself, you know what, Kombolias? Life is not orthogonal. All right? There are more angles in the world besides 0 and 90. Pick one. And so the angle that ended up working for us happened to be 60 degrees. And through using 60 degrees as our sample test strip angle, we were not only able to capture the speciation data of the original method, we were also able to both detect and quantify the amount of recycled fiber in paper, which we believe is the first scientific method to do so. And quite by accident, we recognized that we could use this technique to determine the relative age of paper, and that this could possibly provide an alternative to the carbon-14 dating of historically significant documents. Now, of course, all of these revolutionary benefits are not just a boon to the GPO and to NIST. They will also positively impact manufacturing, other scientific communities, and of course, the environment and consumers. For example, we could adapt this technique in order to verify recycled paper imports and help protect our own domestic recycled paper industry in this country. And also consumers would have greater confidence in their purchases of recycled paper products, knowing that there has been a scientifically validated method used to test them. Now, in conclusion, I just want to say, although there is no such thing as the Office of Good Ideas, at least not yet anyway, innovation in government has been going on for a very long time, and it will continue to go forward. And although I may not be the first innovator in government, nor am I the only innovator in government, nor will I be the last innovator in government, I'm here to let you know that federal employees are working very hard every single day to improve technology and to improve the way of life, not just for American people, but for people all around the world. And with that, I thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you.